Hello, Blake Rudis here with F64 Academy and F64 Elite, and today I want to show you how you can use the Radial Gradient tool to direct traffic of your viewer. So you could really use it as a spotlight to show them where they need to look in your photograph. And you can use it really creatively in both landscapes and portrait work. So here it is on a landscape. Here's the after. I'm directing you right back to here with some colored radial gradients, and here's the before. It's a creative use of the radial gradient. So here is the before and here's the after. Very powerful tool, and we're going to jump into Photoshop and you can learn all about it. Alright, so the whole idea behind using a radial gradient is it's kind of like a spotlight. You can direct the traffic of your viewer exactly where you want them to go in your image with these creative looking spotlights. So in order to do this, let's go ahead and go into our palette here first, our layers palette, and right click here and say medium thumbnails. And there's a reason why I'm doing that, because if you go down here and you select a gradient, you'll actually see the color gradient here. If you have small thumbnails, it's just going to give you what looks like a gradient icon. It's not necessarily showing you the colors. Now, the default color that's selected here is the color that's over here on the left side that I have selected as my primary color. So I can either change that before going into the gradient fill, or I can change it within the gradient fill. So we're talking about radial gradients here. So we have a gradient fill that's going on top of our image, but we want to change that style to radial. Basically, that is our spotlight. The cool thing about this is that once you have it set up, you can just click anywhere on your image and drag that spotlight around. All right. So right now it's just this big pink ball of a spotlight. It's not that great. But if we go into this area right here and click to edit that gradient, we can change this color down here. So independently of what we have as our primary color selected over there, we can click right down here and maybe change this to a yellow color because it's a landscape and we want a yellow kind of spotlight back there, okay? And we'll go ahead and press OK on this and press OK and press OK. So that's basically our radial gradient. Now, if you tried to move this now, it's not gonna work. You can only move this when you're in the actual editor of the gradient. And by default, like this, it's not good. It's just this bright, blown out kind of spotlight of yellow. Not very good. But if we change the blending mode to soft light or color, you get different looks. I would change it to soft light, and then I would even come in here and maybe drop down the opacity a little bit. Maybe to about 50%. We'll just type in 50%. So that's one way to spot it back there, but we have another way we can do that. That is if we have a gradient that is from a solid to a transparency. As you can see here, those squares mean that this is going from a solid yellow and transparent, so the transparent parts aren't actually doing anything. So if I double click this, watch what happens. I can go into this gradient and maybe I change this gradient to, instead of being transparent, we actually have another color there. So let's go ahead and just select one of these gradients like this. Not necessarily the greatest gradient for this, but you can see that what we've done now is we've darkened down this area back here with the color red, and we've brightened up the area around it with the color yellow. Well, what happens if we invert that? So I'll go ahead and take this and make this color yellow again because that's that spotlight that I had there in the background. And I'll go ahead and make this color just a darker, deeper color of yellow. So something like that, maybe an orangish yellow too. You throw a little bit of red in there and throw a little bit of red in there, and that looks good. And we'll press OK, and we'll press OK. So when you're in the gradient fill here, you can actually modify how big you want that gradient to be also. So if you go here where it says scale, you can move that scale over to make it bigger or smaller depending on how big you want your spot to be. Let's say we want our spot to be right there, and we'll press OK. So here's the before and here's the after. Notice how we're kind of playing with the eye here too. We're drawing the eye's attention right into this back area and pushing the attention away from the foreground area by filling that in with a darker color. Now when we turn that off, this is much brighter, so our eye naturally goes there first, but when we turn it on, now we start to transition towards the back area of the photograph. Pretty cool effect. Doesn't just work with landscapes, you can also use it with portraits. So you can see in this portrait, I've already kind of set it up for you here. We'll go ahead and delete that, and we'll delete that. And I'll show you how this can be used on a portrait. So with this portrait in particular, I see that there's a lot of perspective that's pushing me back into this area of the photograph. I pulled this from Pexels.com, which I believe was from Pixabay. So it's a stock image from Pixabay. But the perspective is kind of drawing me away from the subject matter. But we don't have to recompose the photograph to draw our attention back to this woman right here in the foreground. All we have to do is use a creative gradient to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and make a new gradient. I'm going to make sure that that gradient is set to radial, and I'm going to set this back here because that's the spot that I want to push away. We can either use this to highlight a spot or even push a spot away. So I'm going to go ahead and press OK, and I'm going to make sure that this is set to soft light before I go any further. So with this set to soft light, it gives me the ability to see what happens. If we just set this to normal and I were to go back into this gradient and select the gradient that I want, which is actually going to be this one right here, notice what happens. We can't really see what we're doing with our photograph. So if we set that blending mode to soft light, now we can see what happens. So I've already kind of given my little trick away here, but see what I've done is I've reversed the roles here. I've taken this dark blue and put it into the background and allowed a brighter blue to fill in the foreground. So when we turn that back on, look what happens now. She becomes much more prominent than even the perspective that's forcing us back into the back of the photograph. So if we double click this, we can go into the scale and maybe increase that scale or decrease that scale depending on how far we want to push that background back. And remember, you can always move this spotlight around too, okay? I'm calling it a spotlight. It's actually the radial gradient that we're moving around, but we can push this back into this back corner here so that really just kind of vanishes in the image. If you press the reverse button here, what's going to happen is it's basically going to reverse with the light color and the dark color. We don't necessarily want to do that, and we'll just go ahead and press OK on this one. So because this is on its own layer like this, you have the ability to manipulate the opacity or even use things like blend if in the layer options. So I'm going to do another thing with a different type of gradient. I'm going to add a new gradient here, and I'm going to make this just a regular gradient fill that is going up from this pink to transparency. So I'm going to click on that pink to transparency. I'm going to change that color to yellow. Okay, so I'll fill in the bottom of this image with a bright yellow like that. I'll press OK, and I'm going to go ahead and change that to soft light. All right, so I like the way that looks because now it's really even lifting up some of the bottom of my image and really pushing me over to the foreground element, which is this woman right here. So if I double click this gradient fill though, I can go into the layer styles and use blend if. So I've done many tutorials on blend if in the past. Basically, what this means is that if I want to protect the underlying layer's shadows, I will move this over. If I want to protect the underlying layer's highlights, I will pull this to the left. So it looks really harsh right now. So we'll pull this over and then we'll press Alt or Option and we can split and feather that nice and neatly in and add a nice little yellow to that. So we're using gradients in a really effective way. And that one we didn't use a radial gradient, we just used a regular gradient. So here's the before and here's the after. Yeah, we've changed some of her skin tones, and if we wanted to, we could come in here and we could on our mask, we could brush with black in here to bring back some of those skin tones if we would like to do that from that gradient so that she doesn't have just that gradient just, you know, really affecting her skin tones and her hair color also. That's completely up to you. I kind of like the way this looks artistically though. So as you can see here, the radial gradient is a really powerful tool by itself to be used to push and pull the eye to certain areas of the image creatively. But when we use that in combination with blending modes like soft light or color or overlay, and then we incorporate opacity so that we can reduce that a little bit so it's not quite 100%. And then if we go into the blend if, we can protect certain areas of our image, and then we can go in and do some local editing with our masking tools. The possibilities with the radial gradient as a spotlight like this are really just incredible. I mean, absolutely incredible what you can do with this. So again, my name is Blake Rudis with F64 Academy and F64 Elite. If you like this, please comment on it, share it, tell a friend, and subscribe, because if you subscribe, you'll get these tutorials as they come out when I produce them, usually every Friday. And if you'd like to, go over to f64academy.com and get on the email list, because every Friday I send out an email that directs you to tutorials just like this one. Thank you very much for taking the time to watch this. I sincerely appreciate it. It really does mean a lot to me.